So I was thinking,
That's different, but go on.
if we were to split up, who gets the festive foreigners and who gets the film fans?
Are you asking me for a divorce?
Yay! 2 Christmases!
The following podcast contains graphic descriptions of international celebrating and global merrymaking. It may not be suitable for angry or unhappy audience members. Listener discretion is advised. You've been warned.
Have you ever seen any of those foreign films? I don't like them.
Some are born great, others achieve greatness, and some watch Christmas movies.
We are the wild and crazy guys.
Well, they're both festive, aren't they?
Joyeux Noël!
And we are the festive foreign film fans, and happy birthday / retirement, Mark. It is now official, and I'm going to try to pop the champagne. Oh, this champagne doesn't pop. We do have champagne here, though. That doesn't pop, so it's going to be pretty flat. Oh, so Mark,
I heard it pop.
So now you have full time now to devote to this podcast, which is so excellent. I'm so excited because from now on, it's not going to be you sitting across from me. I'm going to see you on the video screen. I'm like, look, there's Mark in the Sahara. Merry Christmas, Mark. Look, in the Congo.
Congo. Nothing can go
I
wrong.
I want on-site reporting. I want live food tastings, Christmas song dance-offs. I mean, we have seen some moves on you. I think it's time that you share your talents with the world.
What are you thinking? Maybe a link off of our podcast onto my videos?
Yeah, Mark's dancing delights.
These videos that don't actually exist today.
This is so very exciting, Mark. For you, birthday, retirement, all those good things, and we know now you're going to be fully devoted to our 4F listeners, and also, of course, to our sponsors. We expect you to be selling lots of bun stackers and regurgipets.
That's why I retired, Bob. I just did
Too
not
much.
feel I was not giving enough to this podcast, was not out there hitting the streets.
Maybe now you can find us a new sponsor, because I hear Organitans, the organic solar tanning salons, I hear they're looking for a new show. They don't use non-sustainable electric tanning beds, no unhealthy chemicals, because guess what?
What?
They use an innovative new solution, solar power. 100% all natural UV rays. They don't produce greenhouse gas emissions or air pollutants. They have minimal environmental effects, and they're the best source of clean energy. All you got to do is you go there and they help you suntan.
So what you're saying is I go there, I pay them money, and they let me go outside right by the facilities and suntan myself.
Yeah. It's called Organitan.
Organitans.
They'd be a great sponsor. So I want you to, that's your first assignment on retirement.
I'm going to call them tomorrow.
But I think retirement's very similar experience. You're not moving from child to adult, but now you have become what the Japanese refer to as the young old, or the yold, because you will not retire quietly into the background. That's what the Japanese say. You don't retire quietly, because we are, as a society, we're healthier and wealthier than previous generations. Plus, you're more active. So we don't expect this fine Mark Chandler hanging about the house in his slippers and listening to the ball game on the radio. No. What will it be like? What will retirement life be like for our Mark Chandler? What are your plans? What do you want to do? What helped make you decide to retire?
Wow, these are tough questions. I do hope to do more things. We have some trips coming up in the next couple months. Greece, California. So definitely some more active there, but I still don't know what long-term will look. I don't think I'll ever go back to work.
No. But I know you're not a, you're going to do something. You always find something to do.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Give it time and we'll report back on what other kind of trouble I can get in between now and then.
That.
Hey, we had a great trivia question last time. Should we answer it?
Yeah, I want to know.
So this is fascinating me. So when it came to our Lebanese trivia in the special village of Bashara, what did the 5 residents have in common?
And you guessed it. You got it right? That they're all the backup singers for Blondie?
It was not. But look, this is amazing. They're all saints recognized by the Catholic Church. With some 37 churches, Bashara is sometimes called the city of churches. And at the top of the valley where it sits is the legendary cedar forest called the Cedars of God, which is mentioned 103 times in the Bible.
I mean, if you look at this Bashara, it's small.
Yeah.
Like 5 saints. Your next door neighbor was a saint.
I think maybe as homework for our next podcast, you and I should try to come up with 5 names of people in the village of Cary, Illinois, who could be a saint.
Oh, I'll need the month.
Want to watch a Christmas movie?
Christmas movies are our bread and butter.
We eat Chinese food and watch Christmas movies.
I heard it's the best Christmas movie since Home Alone.
So tonight's movie is exciting. You mentioned it's a coming-of-age movie. It's called Ça Twiste, a Popoguine, or Rockin' Popoguine. These come-of-age films like Stand By Me and Superbad and Booksmart, right? A lot of things in common, right? The actors are typically young and facing the experiences of growing up. These things are very popular. They connect with the broad audience. Young people are in the throes of their adolescence. They really connected to it. I think older viewers sort of look at it and I think they smirk at maybe their own growing up or how much better it is to be growing up versus trying to be an adolescent again. That's just one age I wouldn't want to repeat. High school, teenage, nope. Yeah. But coming-of-age films are really popular because they're highly personal stories, and they often include some humor and music. And certainly Rocking Popoguine fits that mold. It's interesting. It's based in the 60s, early 60s in Senegal, Africa, and it follows the exploits of 2 gangs of teenagers. And just like our last movie, Senegal was actually settled by the French. And they were going through sort of their own cultural revolution around the 60s as well. So we know what the 60s were like in America. Well, Senegal in the early 60s gained their independence from France.
Yeah.
And so as we talk about this movie a little bit, it's coming of age of not only the teenagers, but of this little town of Poponguine and the conflicts between their traditions as Senegalese, as well as then this one Frenchman, Mr. Benoit, who's there to teach them French.
This is why I love watching movies with you. I never thought about that, but it is a coming of age of Senegal as well. Mm-hmm. That's true. That's a very insightful thought. And my whole thought was I was going to ask you, I love coming of age film. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I really do. Even as an old ass adult, I kind of enjoy them. You know what I mean? Like Superbad. I thought that was hilarious.
Superbad's
and it reminded me so much of like when I was growing up. So you love it. We say these are gangs of teenagers, but it's gang in a loose. These are not like gangs like you would think. These are not.
These are not the Sharks and the Jets.
Yeah, they're not killing any people or anything like that.
Yeah, not at all. But let's talk a little bit about the actors. And again, there's a lot of characters here, but as we narrowed it down to 3 to think about. The first one is Ousmane Bo. He plays Johnny Halliday. It is believed that the director of this film recruited non-actors. So this is the first film for all of them. We don't have a biography on Ousmane Bo, so it does not appear that he continued with acting. So it might have been still his one shot at it. Mm-hmm. The next actor who plays the character Eddie is Ibrahima Mabe. Although we don't find an official biography, Ibrahima did continue as an actor and producer. He has been in more than 25 films and 7 television series, but this was his first film.
Okay.
And then the last actor who plays Clo Clo, Patrice Nasiang, we don't have a biography for Patrice either. So again, this also appears to be his only film. So again, similar to some other movies we saw with young actors where they go out and they recruit these young kids to play these characters. But the movie, again, it starts around Christmas time in Senegal, in this town of Popoguine. The story is narrated by a young kid named Bach. Bach's one of the young students in this class. I mean, he's sort of narrating the story, and it really does start out about these two gangs. Ooh. One is called the Kings, and again, the 60s, and think about the integration with the French and really American cultures, right? But the Kings have some really pretty cool nicknames. They have Jimi Hendrix, Ray Charles, Otis Redding, and James Brown, right? So that the Kings have adopted all the soul singers from the United States,
which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's hilarious. And then the Inseparables, or they're called the Inns, right? So the Kings and the Inns. The Inns, their names aren't as kind of cool, but there's Sheila, there's Johnny Halliday, there's Sylvie, there's Clo Clo, and there's Eddie. And so what's interesting about it is the Inns, they're the ones who have girls, right? And the girls, their girl clubs are kind of connected with the Inns. But the Kings, they don't have the girls, but they have a record player.
Which is everybody wants
a record player, right? But like, what's a record player and songs to sing if you don't have girls to dance with, right? And so,
and don't they dress really well?
Oh my God.
The Kings?
Yeah.
I'm like, God, they're stylish.
Well, you think about the 60s and what people are wearing at the time. I mean, they had bell bottoms, right? It's the time of bell bottoms. They have these I would say though, it's very beautiful and multicolored African clothing.
Yeah, you can see like there's an African influence, but stylish.
Oh, so yeah, and they look great standing there by themselves.
Yes,
but so this movie really starts how the Kings want to have the girls and the Inns want to have the record player, and that's sort of the one of the main parts of their confrontation, right? I mean, it's not, as you said earlier, Bob, this is not about knives and guns and gangs, but they call themselves gangs because it's sort of their clique, right? It's their clique of people. And so the movie just starts telling their story and about how it's Christmas time, right? Because as the movie begins, they're excited because Eddie's girlfriend has moved to Paris and has promised that she's going to come back with a record player. So they're excited, right? Like, and so the mail truck comes and they run and they go there hoping to see a record player there, but there's no record player, just a letter saying, I'm not going to make it back. I'm not going to give you a record player. I can't make it back there. And so the Inns and the girls in the Inns are starting to say, hey guys, like the Kings are looking pretty good over there with their record player. Kind of a little shallow, I think, but
music.
Hey, it's the 60s, right? The other thing funny too about this movie is some of the translation. Remember, we've seen some of our movies where the translations don't come across exactly. I like the one place where the guy tells the little kid, go suck a bone, you Undertaker. And I was like,
I thought for sure you would like that one.
Where did that come from? What's the context there? But anyway, I digress.
You wish you could share that with your dad.
I do. So this conflict is going on, and they're trying to come up with a way to buy a record player. They come up with this idea of resurrecting a puppet show where they could charge all the kids a few dollars to come and see the puppet show. That'll raise money for them to buy their record player.
They have a party.
Yeah. They want to get a record player, have a big party, bring everybody together. But then it's just sort of this comedy of errors, right? They set up this puppet show, and it really is like cut out figures with a candle behind it, and so there's shadows being...
It was really cute. Yeah. That's what I loved about it. I mean, they tried so hard, and it's shadow puppets done with a candle. It's very rudimentary, but really sweet.
Very. And the kids come, and the kids seem to be enjoying it, right? I mean, to try to paint the picture for those, I hope you'll watch the movie, but like, this is a pretty desolate area.
Yeah, a rural village.
Very rural village on the ocean. Yeah. Probably not a lot of jobs there, right? They're farmers, they're merchants. There's one merchant in town. So this is a poor community.
Well, and it's funny when you talk about the Kings, how dressed and stylish and all that, but then they're fishermen, then you see them like fishermen. Yeah.
Out on their boats with their bell bottoms. Yeah. And so they have this show, they make some money, but it's not enough to buy their own record player. So they're they're sort of like, what are we going to do? How are we going to raise this money? And so they come up with this idea, and they hear from Bach this idea of having a surprise party. And they're like, a surprise party? What's a surprise party? Like, do you pay for a surprise party? And they're like, well, no, the rich people in France they're rich. They don't have to pay for a party. And so Johnny, the head of the inns, comes up with the idea, we're going to have a party. And when they get there, we're going to charge them. And that'll be the surprise. So they pull their little bit of money they made from the puppet show, and they try to work with Bach. And think about Bach as this really young kid, maybe 9 or 10 years old, who's a player, man.
Yeah, older than his years.
Oh my God, this kid is constantly doing little errands for people. Everybody knows him. Everybody adopts him as his little kid. He sort of runs errands between Johnny and his love interest Sylvia, where they're passing this little scrapbook back in one another. Bach has this little girlfriend, I'm air quoting, 9 or 10 years old, who, he takes poetry that Johnny writes to Sylvia and takes it as his own and tries to read it to his little girlfriend. And so,
and not in his own manner, not very poetic either.
Oh, no. Exactly. That's definitely a good point. So Bach comes up with this idea, and he goes to the kings and saying, hey, the inns they're catching up with you. They're going to buy a record player. They're going to have this big party. But if you want in on it, can we use your record player? And they're like, yeah, but there's going to be a fee for the record player. There's going to be a fee for the records. And so Bach says, okay, well, we'll pay you a fee, but we can't pay you everything. You're going to get half of what we get on the gate, whatever comes in. And so he's just working both sides of this equation, so anyway, so they start planning for this big party, right? It's going to be this party. They're going to charge everybody. And Johnny tells all the young kids to go out and tell everybody about this big party. And they do. And so the day of the big party event, right, everybody's getting dressed up, all the young kids, and all these kids are showing up. And I think it's Eddie was at the front desk there. And he's like, okay, it's going to be few dollars to get in. And the kids are saying, well, wait a minute. I went and told people about this, so I deserve to be compensated. And so I should get in free. And so what ends up happening is everybody gets in free.
Yes.
And so they have this party.
And it seems like kind of a fun party, too.
Yeah, I mean, there's people dancing. But what ends up happening is one of the elders comes to the party, is wondering how this hut out on the ocean is getting power. And he calls out his son, follows the wire back to his store, and says, you're stealing God's electricity, and pulls the plug on the party. And maybe I'll stop here and come back to the story, because the other thing that's going on parallel with this is there's this Frenchman named Mr. Benoit. Think about Mr. Benoit is coming into this village to, I'm going to use a harsh word here, but indoctrinate is probably a harsh word. It might be a better word, but maybe teach is a softer word. But teach them about the French culture, teach them the French language. In fact, he forbids the French, anything but French, to be spoken in the school, even though Wolof is the language that they go by. And, he is there to teach the children, teach the culture to the adults. And he's getting burnt out. He doesn't necessarily want to be there. The elders, or the notables, I think they were called in the movie, they are sort of iffy about it, right? Because think about the 60s. They're breaking away from French rule. So the main person there, Father Joseph, he goes to Mr. Benoit and say, hey, what's wrong? You're important to us. And, we want to be respectful of each other. And Mr. Benoit sort of insults him and says, well, you're so lucky I'm here. Just think what would have happened if the Senegal language or Senegalese were the other way around. You would have ruined all our traditions as Frenchmen and stuff like that, which in reality, that's exactly what he did to the Senegalese. So this conflict is sort of going on simultaneous to the kings and the inns about sort of who's right, who's wrong, and that type of thing too.
And I should say, they treat him very respectfully.
Oh, they do.
They really do. I'm not sure he deserves it, but especially the way he treats some of the people, but they treat him very well.
They do. And they do. So So that's kind of overshadowing. And then the elders of the group, the notables, they're also having trouble with the youth, right? Think about like America in the 60s and the youth sort of trying to get out on their own. Well, they're not excited about this dance party that's going on. They're not excited probably about the clothes the kids are wearing. And so there's that conflict going on. So you have multiple kind of, like I said before, coming of ages, right? You have the coming of age of Senegal, the coming of age of these kids, and sort of then the elders. What are we going to do with these kids, right? They're not respecting the old ways. And so back to the dance party, the kings show up looking for 50% of the gate like they were promised. Well, there's 50% of zero is still zero. Yep. So they're angry. There's a big fight out on the beach. And by fight, I'd say it was kind of more like thumb wrestling. Yeah. It wasn't a violent movie, but still sort of they fight. And the kings get mad and they sneak back and they burn down the hut where the party was. Not a well thought out plan since their record player was still in the hut. So now they burned down this hut and now they're fighting. What's interesting is that the elders bring both the inns and the kings into town and they hit them, they spank them, right? With the rod, right? I mean, it's sort of, tough love or corporal punishment. And
it takes a village, right? They're all involved.
I mean, and they're all mad at each other, right? Because it's sort of, they're blaming each other. Like, we're getting sort of punished for your party. Yeah. Like, well, you burned down the hut, right? But in some ways, it also is helping them come together, right? They're sort of putting
now they're on equal, because neither one has a record player now.
Right. They're still girls, but there's no record player. And so the movie moves through then. There's sort of the Mr. Benoit. As you said, they treat him very nicely. Like, again, he's drinking a lot and they're really worried about him, even though they're not in agreement that all the things the French are doing are what they want to do. As a human being, they say, right, we might not agree with him as a Frenchman, but he's a human being. And so Father Joseph, the main elder, he organizes the choir to come and sing to him, and they sing Ave Maria. They've been trying to fix him up with girls, because they're wondering why he's single. Yep. The girls, the women of the village have come up with the idea that he's impotent, which is kind of harsh, But they sort of show their love for him. One of the elders also in the course of the movie, it's getting near Christmas, comes back to the village with a TV. So now they're modernizing the village. But again, the elders are not excited about this modern piece, right? And it's funny. I try to watch.
Well, they're curious, but they're not excited about it.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly. And I was trying to figure out what they were watching.
I know. I was.
It looked like there were 3 kings maybe on there at Christmas. Like there's these 3 men with crowns on, and I made up in my own head it was 3 kings, but I have no idea what it is. But the choir welcomes him. And also one of the things happened too with some of the money that they made from the puppet show. They had given it to Johnny to give to his dad to try to buy a record player in a nearby town. So they go and see Johnny and Johnny's dad. He works at a resort. Johnny's dad is sort of like mad, like, what do you think, I'm a thief? And starts accusing him. And they start telling him about this plight of what happened. And it turns out that staying at this resort was a rock star whose name is Frank Larry. I had a laugh.
I know.
He looked like the least likely rock star. I can't even describe him. But Johnny and Eddie and Clo Clo tell him the story about what happened. And he agrees to come back to the village to hold a live concert. And so they get together, the inns, the kings. Also, one thing too that happens too when the elders are beating the children, giving them discipline, the thing is Mr. Benoit does come over and say, guys, what are you doing? Like, you're beating the future. Like, so think about what's happening here, right? These men are your future, and alienating them isn't the answer, right?
It's going to help,
And so it's just interesting because he's trying to smooth it between the kids and the elders. The elders are mad at Mr. Benoit. So there's just a lot of good sub-stories in here. At the end of the movie, they have a big party. Frank Larry's up there rocking it like no one else has rocked it before. And it's nice. And like what happens in most coming of age movies at the end, they tell you what everybody did.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
This person ran away and got in the army. This person has married and has 4 wives. And so it was a cute movie.
What's surprising to me was unlike some of the others, I wasn't as invested in the story. I was surprised how moving I found that last party. It really, I was like, I don't know why. It just kind of like, what a great way to end. They're all at this party. Everyone's happy. Oh, it's like the end of Grease. Oh, we're all friends again. We're all back together. You know.
What do you think? Do you think this was a Christmas movie?
You know, this is a hard one because I know there's some references to Christmas, but there is not a drop of Christmas anywhere in this film, really. I mean, there's some references. The choir was great.
Yeah.
I do think they were watching something Christmas on TV. It's the Christmas holiday, but I'm gonna say no.
Yeah, I struggled with it as well, but I have to lean no. I would say this though, that I first watching the movie, I didn't like it at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd say second time through, as I took a step back and thought about all the other conflicts and not just the kings and the inns, it started to warm me up a little bit. What did you feel after watching? We just kind of said at the end, the dance party.
That kind of made it for me. What I do like, this was one of those films where I kind of, the story was okay. I was more fascinated by the time, the era, what they were wearing, the village, very rural, how they're making their clothes in the market. And so I was more taken with the scenery and what was going on, because the story it's a slight story. Although the puppet show was great. I love the fact that a record player is so important to them.
Right.
Music is so important, and you see it. And then the dancing. And so I'm with you. When I walked away from it, I thought, it's okay. But when you go back and think about I really like that part of it. Oh, I like that part. So altogether it added up. Is it top 5 on my list? I don't think so, but I wouldn't write it off. I think I enjoyed it.
Who would you recommend watch this? Like, what would be the set of circumstances? Instead of just saying yes or no, but like, what's the set of circumstances that you would want
somebody to watch it?
Yeah.
I think it would be somebody who I think maybe has a jaded or maybe a bad view of Africa or what happens in Africa. You can really learn a lot about just the similarities in them growing up and being teenagers, and it could really give you some perception that like, hey, we share a lot in common.
Yeah. You know what? Home run. I think you nailed it. I totally agree. It's like their coming of age story is not really much different than those, especially if you grew up in and around the 60s. Yeah, I totally agree.
You know what else was great too? It didn't demonize, like Mr. Benoit wasn't a really bad white person. He was trying to indoctrinate them and all that, but he had some good elements to him. And the elders there, they made mistakes too, but they were really cared about they were looking out for the best of their kids. So it was very nuanced and honest, I thought,
I agree. So let's talk about, how to say Merry Christmas.
Mark, I got to tip my hat to you. Somehow, and this is all by chance, you end up with the hardest ones. Always. I get like, they only speak English in this country, so, and you now have to speak in Wolof. So no, I do not know how to say this.
Well, we could say it in French, right? Since we know how to, I know you know how to say it in French, right, Bob?
Yes, I do. That I do.
Okay. But really the language spoken is Wolof. Wolof and Senegal go hand in hand. Not only do the Wolof have a large population in Senegal, but their language is spoken by about 85% of the people there.
Oh.
The native Wolof people, who are about 40% of the population, but most other Senegalese speak it as a second language. And Wolof is only what you hear on the streets. You'll never see anything printed because that's all French.
Oh, so yeah, kind of like Mr. Benoit. Your legal documents are in French, but when you see each other on the street, you speak Wolof.
So if you were to be in Senegal and you wanted to wish someone a Merry Christmas, it would be Manji Lanjakor G Noels.
Pretty good. Manji Lanjakor G Noels. I see Noel. I know that.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the cultural aspects of Senegal. So despite having 95% of a Muslim population, Christmas is extremely a popular holiday in Senegal, which has a tradition of Muslims and Christmas adopting each other's holidays, which I just love that.
That is great. Yeah.
This is awesome. Christmas is celebrated by Muslims in Senegal, in Dakar, Nadar, Casamance, and other parts. Muslims often wish a Merry Christmas or join a meal with Christians, just as they do to celebrate Muslim holidays. I think it'd be so cool to be able to celebrate multicultural events like that.
And they're open. I love that, you know?
Well, it's interesting. This Senegalese really believe in this word. It's called terana, which means the Wolof word for hospitality. And so they take that almost as a pride, like they want to be this welcoming community. Most Senegalese believe this is what holiday season is all about, coming together for something greater than themselves and putting differences aside, even if it's just for one day. And so their whole cultures around this being warm and welcome and understanding of each other.
It seems like they have a better read on Christmas than many of us do.
No truer words have been spoken. The food in Senegal is a fusion of influence from France, from Portugal, and from the Middle East.
Wow.
I know, it sounds
really good.
Yes. It often features ingredients from different cultures, and traditional food from Senegal is made for sharing. During Christmas, residents eat teapden. It's a national dish of Senegal made with rice on a big tray, and it's served with rice on the bottom with the rest of the food on top, like fish and vegetables. The fish is marinated in parsley, lemon, garlic, and then you cook it with tomato paste, tomatoes, onions, peppers, garlic, and spice. Interesting thing, though, is it's put in this big platter, again, with the rice on the bottom, and it's passed from person to person. And the tradition is to eat it with your hands and fingers, like you don't use utensils. I found that fascinating. There's a festival in a town called the Bean that starts right after Christmas and is one of the longest festivals in Senegal. It takes place in the tiny village of Abine, located in the southern part of Senegal. It happens over a span of 10 days of drumming and dance performances. There I am dancing again. The festival also includes traditional wrestling matches and other cultural events. If you can't, you dance, you wrestle. It will attract musicians from all over West Africa, as well as local drum and dance troops. The festival starts on December 26th with a traditional ceremony to celebrate the newly circumcised people.
What?
So can we just take a time out here? So I had to do a little research on this, and it's not uncommon in other cultures, but the young boys do get circumcised around age 10 or 11.
We're here in Senegal?
In Senegal.
Oh my gosh, those poor kids. No wonder they throw a 10-day festival for them.
You got to keep jumping dancing. I don't want to sort of criticize or feel like we're mocking someone else's culture or anything like that. But like just how that, like processing that, like, so you're having the same reaction I did. Like I thought, it must have been the old way to do things, but still today. And I thought, well, gosh, hardly anybody must get circumcised then. Wrong. Like 75% of the boys are circumcised and go through this traditional event and there's a ceremony but anyway, there's this event is meant to celebrate the newly circumcised or coming of age of these young men.
Okay. And I'm not mocking. All I'm saying is those 70% of those boys or whatever, they are not taking part in the dancing at this festival. They may be sitting enjoying it, but they're not jumping around, trust me.
Well, it ends on January 2nd, but outside of this, Abine is very, very rural. In fact, only 20% of the village has electricity.
Wow. So it's not electric instruments. This is just,
drums and dancing.
Wow. Think about this. They live in extreme poverty, but their celebration of Christmas is hospitality, openness. Jeez.
Yeah.
That's so impressive.
It is. It's inspiring, quite honestly.
I might get circumcised.
So on that note,
This calls for some Christmas music.
Yes, this Christmas music.
What kind of Christmas music is that?
The least you could do is play some Christmas music. Now back to Christmas music.
Let's listen to some music. So that song, Petite Papa Noel, was originally released in 1946 by French singer Tino Rossi. But in 2013, a Senegalese singer, Combo Gualo, released a single to the rhythm of the famous song, but sung in Wolof with children. This version was done for charity to raise funds for Lumière pour Enfants, or the Light for Children Foundation, to help underprivileged children. Kumba Gualo is the second best-selling singer and is known for combining the classic garrote structure, which is the African or oral tradition of storytellers and poets, with modern music recording in African rhythms.
You know, it's so interesting if you think of this episode, last episode, and I can even think back, I think it was to the woman who combined her rural tradition with modern. I love when they do that because you get it's a combination of the past and the current or the future.
That's right. Yeah, I love it too. I really like this song, like the music behind it, and her voice is just incredibly soothing. Ready for some trivia, Mr. Baker?
I am. Let's see if I can do this one.
It's trivia.
Senegal it's a mystery. It's just so many things and facets about it that are things that are incredibly interesting. We couldn't find anything about the actors, little about the customs, and hardly any local Christmas songs from there. However, we discovered some interesting facts.
Okay.
We could ask you about the troop of chimpanzees in Senegal that use spears to hunt other animals.
Ooh, that sounds scary. That sounds like Planet of the Apes.
Or how the women in Senegal tattoo their gums back to have a more beautiful smile.
Wow.
Ouch. Circumcision, gums. Eesh. Or even how the polite expressions for saying that someone has died is to say his or her library has burned.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
But
did you hear about Joe? His library burned.
He lost his library card. You know, Sue said the other day, if I don't find some activity, she's going to take away my library card.
Tell her you got a week-long or a 10-day festival you got to attend in Abilene, Senegal.
The admission ticket is painful now. But what we want to know is about a certain lake that is there. It's famous for an unusual feature. So there's a lake in Senegal that is famous for an unusual feature. Do you know what it is?
I do not, but now listening to the ceremony, the tattooed gums, I'm so interested what this lake might offer.
Well, viewers, let us know. Think about it. If you know the answer to this one, this may be one of the toughest questions we've had so far. You know, we are giving out these stickers. And just let us know if you have a guess. But before we say goodnight, well, I want to share a quote from Abhijit Naskar, who is a neuroscientist and has written multiple books in that field. And I think it's crazy. I find it crazy when men and women of science can be reflective on something that's maybe less scientific, more emotional, right? But Abhijit says, 12 days aren't enough to celebrate Christmas. As humans, we must live each day helping others.
Hey, that's a Senegalese way.
Right. There you go.
You know what? You made me, when you said that, have you ever seen, I've seen those articles where scientists write about why they believe in God.
Right.
Yeah. It is very interesting. And I love it when you bring things that I didn't know about, like that background on the Abilene Festival. This just every episode with you, Mark, is just such a fun learning experience.
Wow, right back at you. I think the movies are fun, but I think learning about these customs, I don't know. I feel enriched as we talk about these different places, and I hope our listeners are too. Again, send us info at festivefans@gmail or via Messenger or Facebook page, X, Threads, Instagram. We're there waiting to hear from you. And so with
I'm
that.
just going to apologize, though. I'm probably going to shuffle out of here with my knees close together and thinking about the festival.
I don't know what to say. It's
Good night.
eye-opening.
Say good night, Bob.
Good night, Bob.
Actually, we're done. Done.
It's over. It's over.
It's over, kaput, finito.
It's over. It's over. It's over.
This has been a Waysound Studio production.
And sound engineering on our show is by Jake Fontana.